Alright, just going to my first schedule for the day. I thought I'd just drop by here in case for you that haven't seen Science World before. Alright, there was quite a few news to talk about, but I gotta keep my head straight to finish this first. So I'll come back in a bit. Just finished my first thing for the day. You guys want to see some giant birds since I was passing by here? Actually, you guys probably saw this when I was at the Harbour Centre from the top view. Here is the ground level view of the BC Place Stadium and everything like that. All this stuff usually means there's a show or a movie shooting here. I usually don't get to show you guys stuff like this because of all the NDAs and stuff I have to sign, but since I don't have an NDA for this one, whatever this is, I guess I'll show you guys what it looks like quickly, since it's on my way anyways, and I just kind of saw this randomly. Alright, some spare time to talk right now. I might do more when I get home later tonight, but the biggest news was apparently here in Canada there's new drone laws today. They're basically restricting like recreational users and stuff like that. Actually, funny enough, the first thing that came to my mind when I read this was something about they were really emphasizing how before a lot of the things were only guideline recommendations versus a law. And as you know, I've been actually telling you guys that before, saying, okay, why do people keep saying these are laws when it says recommended? So now they're more clear saying, nope, it's a law now. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, some of the stuff though, like the 9 kilometers away from an airport and all that stuff, or you know, don't fly it like crazy. I mean, haven't we all been doing that already? Actually, it might be a good time to do this today anyways because the weather is pretty bad right now for drone flying and all. It's really windy and it's raining like crazy. So I'll probably go home later tonight, sit down, and you guys can all read the rules with me and let's see what we can get out of it. Okay, so I'm just home right now. Let's try to dive deeper with these new drone laws. So like most people, I basically just read the news here, and it says there's new rules now. Seems like the bullet points, it says, the rules which are in effect immediately means recreational users will face a fine of up to $3,000 if drones weighing more than 250 grams are caught flying. Okay, so unfortunately, I guess that means for the Mavic, it's no longer exempt from everything. And again, it brings me back to the point before where everything said it was recommendations, whereas now it's a quote law. Okay, they have like this, this pamphlet, which is kind of like the one they had before, but now it's a quote law. So flying for fun, new rules for recreational drone users. It's now the law. If you fly your drone for fun and it weighs more than 250 grams and up to 35 kilograms, follow these new rules. Okay, so do not fly your drone higher than 90 meters above the ground. I think most people were doing that anyways before, so that's not a big deal. Closer than 75 meters from buildings, vehicles, vessels, animals, people, crowds, etc. Okay, this is kind of stupid, honestly. I mean, technically, what part of the world are you going to be always away, like with this distance? Is there not always going to be like a bird or something like that within that distance? Even if you're not an attendant, even if I walk outside right now, I'll probably be within 75 meters of a bird. Jeez, that is ludicrous. Closer than 9 kilometers from a center of an aerodrome, airport, helipad, seaplane. Okay, I guess that's okay in some ways, but in many ways, for a casual flyer, for example, it doesn't really make sense. Especially if someone's just flying it like in their backyard, for example, like how that makes sense where they can't just, you know, just fly like at a certain level and just capture pictures, for example. I mean, just an example, I mean, yesterday you guys saw my vlog. I took basically videos of just, you know, my nephew playing in the playground. Okay, who has an issue with that? Does anyone in the public have an issue with that? In my opinion, it's just a camera. Within the controlled airspace, 9 kilometers of forest fires. Okay, like those forest fires and stuff I can understand. I mean, you don't want to, you know, dump your drone into some crazy, you know, in the middle of the helicopters trying to dump water and here you are trying to crash into it. I mean, that makes sense in many ways. Where you could interfere with police, first responders at nights or in clouds. Okay, I guess that means people in. Well, actually, I think I know what they mean by in clouds, but can you actually fly high enough to be in the cloud? If that makes sense. Don't fly if you're not within 500 meters of your drone. If your name, address, and telephone number are not clearly marked on your drone. Now, the silly thing about that, about the address, telephone, and number, I mean, it makes sense, but if you're going to make people do that, shouldn't you, as the government, kind of have a system for that? I mean, who in the world necessarily wants to put all of their personal contact details on the drone, if that makes sense? I mean, wouldn't you rather have it like in an ID or something like that? Isn't that how they do it in the US? Everyone registers it and you have this ID number, so if someone in an authority wants to pull it up, then there's all your information. And just a little funny, silly thing about that too, with the current rules, like what they stated, they want 75 meters away from a building and stuff. It's virtually impossible to fly it anywhere. So why would you even have that in the first place? I mean, bottom line is based on like the research, it doesn't even matter. It should just be keep it out. Like for a recreational user, it's dead. You basically have to be a commercial flyer in many ways, from what I gather here, anyways. Now, this is one of the things I found interesting because, as you guys remember before, one of the main seesaw back and forth in terms of like the information and stuff I was getting was the Mavic Pro was too small, where it counted as a model aircraft. Now, I'm still a little bit unclear, so does that mean, for example, the Mavic is a UAV drone now, for example? That basically led me to the this Mac Canada site, which one of you viewers actually brought this up before in terms of joining, like, say, this club to fly a drone. And it's kind of funny because I'm just reading here on the site. Let me see if I can find it here. Because it says here, however, within the regulations is an exemption for model, for them, for this Mac organization. Now, it kind of makes me wonder, were these guys on the board, like, for making the rules, for example? Because if so, I mean, I'm still new to the drone hobby and all that, but it seems like you're catering too much of the people that actually had a big say in it, which is probably these guys. And when I looked at the video, like for their promo videos, you can see here, I mean, they seem fairly old, just from what I see. Who flies a drone like this, honestly? That buys like a Mavic and so forth. You don't fly it in these crazy, like, upside down speed, doing like acrobatic moves and so forth. I mean, just to show an example again, like for yesterday, these are the type of shots, in my opinion, that most people that fly these drones try to capture. Moments. It's like a DSLR, except you want to get like the air shots. You don't go crazy like what these guys are doing here. I mean, it's nice that you guys have your little fields to, fly your model aircrafts or whatever, but that's not how everybody flies it. A little ridiculous, in my opinion, if that's the case. Just from what I gather, anyways, like, as this is an example, like, with these videos and so forth, there probably was not many regular users that gave input on these so-called laws, if that's what you want to call it. Okay, so for the person I guess responsible for the drone laws, Garneau, this quote kind of made me like, oh my goodness. He was saying, for example, Garneau says the government wanted to make changes before a drone hits an airplane and causes a catastrophe. End quote. That's the kind of nightmare scenario that keeps me awake at night as your transport minister. Really? Okay. Oh my goodness. What's what's wrong with that, in my opinion, is again, you're probably assuming that most people nowadays that use, like, say, these drones are flying it like these model aircraft people, for example, on these fields, like going crazy and so forth. That's just not the case. I mean, again, people like myself, we basically fly it really safe. We have, like, even on the Mavic Pros and the drones, for example, they have sensors to hopefully, they stop any accidents. If it's about to crash, it'll stop. And we're there to capture moments and pictures, not to fly it like a maniac. To me, this just makes me think like, oh my goodness, as the government or whatever, you're completely out of date in terms of how modern day people use these type of technologies. I posted this once before, but this reminds me of that snowboard video I saw, where in the past, like a lot of the skiers, for example, they're like they thought snowboards were so dangerous. It's quote no brakes. It's like a missile, and it all should be banned. And this, in my opinion, is kind of like a knee-jerk reaction in terms of how you should be handling it. I mean, if you have safety concerns, I mean, just from my current experience from flying the drones and stuff like that, you could say like if it was like the Mavic Pro, you're not allowed to fly in sports mode if it's like in a busy area. That is understandable, okay? Because that's more prone to accident. There's no sensors or anything. I mean, that's what you should be focused on, not kind of like throwing a blanket statement on, you know, how all people fly drones rather. And I'm just reading some of the comments here on the sites just to see if I agree or disagree. I know this guy goes same thing. Within 75 meters of building, vehicles, vessels, animals, or people, and he goes, "Huh? Show me a place on a planet that fits this. Even a desert wouldn't technically." I agree. And then more people say, you know, another one-eyed blanket reaction. I agree. Let me try to find one that's actually for this rule. Okay, this is probably the more average public response. Like this lady here says, that all looks reasonable to me. Apply for a commercial license if having a drone is essential for you. Again, this just makes me think like people's perception of what a drone is only what they see like on the media, what they report, you know, these huge things or flying it really fast and, you know, crashing into buildings and so forth. That's just not the case. I mean, to that, I blame the media mostly just for not reporting, you know, some better stories and so forth. But I guess that's why, in many ways, too. I mean, not to change the subject, but this is why so many people nowadays rely more on digital media, like, say, the online commentaries and all that, as opposed to the regular news outlets, because those people are actually reporting or not reporting, but showing, like, what life really is, the information with all the opinions and stuff, not just, like, select media sensational stories that give them the most, you know, buzz, if that makes sense. And actually, that Garneau guy actually specifically made a comment for this Mac organization. There are places where drones can be used. I would encourage people to contact the Mac of Canada or to find an area that is more remote. Again, were those the only guys on the board, for example, where you got your opinions? Did you not go to like the regular people to see how it works? Like how people are using it nowadays? Crazy. When it comes to safety, I don't think anything is overkill, said Garneau in a response to a reporter. Yes, there can be an overkill in like anything in life. I mean, if you think about it, like playing a sport, for example, what if you have, I don't know, two people, like the stereotypical example is, let's say, a parent throwing a baseball to their child, like back and forth. If they throw that ball hard enough and it hits their head, for example, serious danger, correct? But what if you make a law saying now it's illegal for people to throw a baseball, even like in their backyard, for example? Not an overkill? You're crazy, honestly, if you don't think that's an overkill, like for a law, just as an example. Okay, and I guess the last quote here is he says, I believe that we have to strike the right balance between encouraging the drone industry but doing it responsibly. I honestly don't see how this is encouraging like the drone industry in any way. I mean, take myself for example. In the beginning, before I even got the Mavic Pro and everything like that, I actually tried to learn everything, you know, as much as possible. But even on the Transport Canada site, there's no real, you know, education. They have no formal schooling and so forth. So the only real way to get skill for this is to go out to like, you know, a field where there's nobody there and to start, you know, flying to practice it. And you guys can see, like, for me, like for a lot of my videos, I've been flying, I've been practicing, and I think a lot of you agree, I've been improving, correct, in terms of my video skills. And actually, from now on, like from then on afterwards, it's mostly been more about me trying to learn how to take the best videos as opposed to like flying it. Because flying it, I think I've had the confidence already to fly it safely and everything like that. But to me, this does not encourage, honestly, more people. Like, why would you want to spend, like, say, I don't know, $1,500 on a drone to have a law that restricts you everywhere, especially with things like that, you know, not near an animal thing? I mean, come on, where is there not a bird usually within that distance? So what happens if you're flying it and a bird comes in? It's like, oh, I'm gonna give you a ticket now. Oh, ridiculous. Although what confused me a little bit about this is I thought the new rules weren't supposed to be valid until like in the summertime because they said they wanted to propose something like a knowledge test or something like that. So I don't know why this came all of a sudden, so to speak. Although the laws are kind of really so dumb in some ways where have you ever seen like people like DJI and other people that use their drones as like a steady cam? Like they don't even fly it. They just take the drone and they carry it and film it. I mean, with some of the ways the law are written, it almost makes it sound like even if you don't fly it, but you take your drone and start filming it, even if it's for commercial purposes, the law would say, nope, you are doing a crime now. I mean, to me, that shows you how, like, in many ways, how unthorough this was. It's basically, in my opinion, a knee-jerk reaction. Right, so it makes me wonder, where do we go from here? The weather's actually not very good for flying today, which kind of worked out to, I guess, read all this news and so forth. But it makes me wonder, what do I do afterwards now, since I can't practice the drone? It basically prevents you from flying anywhere. So I actually have a lot of footages and stuff to, I captured a lot, so I can actually use that for practice my editing skills. But for flying, I don't really know right now. I think it requires a little bit more research, so I'll take it on a day-to-day basis. And in many ways, maybe I do have to do that SFOC thing. They're forcing basically people to be a commercial pilot in many ways. So we'll see where it goes. Maybe it will work out too, because remember how I had to get my new battery and stuff like that? So maybe this downtime would be good for research. Right, other than that, what are your guys' thoughts about that? In my opinion, really, really outdated mindsets. You're there to work for the people, and these laws, in my opinion, don't really help the majority of the people in any way. It's more about fear mongering, in my opinion. All right. Other than that, yeah. So that's about the end of the day. Let's see what happens. I'm curious about hearing any of you guys' thoughts, especially for those that actually live here in Canada.